Hey everybody, Dan here. It's Monday morning, and most of you today have the day off from school. I know some of you don't if you're at college, university, you don't. But for the rest of you, you pretty much do as far as I gather, because I know, though for my kid, she has the day off, so I can only assume the rest of you do too. But even if you don't, I just want to take a few minutes today just to talk about what it's like for you in school right now. And when I say in school, what I mean for you is at home, because that's where you are. Man, I can only imagine what it must be like for you, right? Because not only do you have to do all your school online, but though you're now home all the time, and so all the days are starting to really, just be a blur. In fact, I saw a post earlier this week that I think captures what it's like just to be in our situation. And so the post said, never before in our history has the line been blurred between a snack and a meal. And I think that's so true. For many of us, when we go to the fridge, we don't know whether or not we're having lunch or just another snack. In the same way for school, it's hard to kind of know, okay, what's my time for school? What's my time to be done? And though maybe you're like me and you already kind of really struggle with school and it's already kind of hard to get into it. For me, it was always difficult. I remember, yeah, I was usually kind of like right on being yeah, I would just kind of in general, though not be a very good student, usually around a C student is where I, kind of lived most of the time. Um, it wasn't until I was finally done high school and I finally got to college where I finally saw school differently. And I saw it differently in a couple different ways. The first way I saw it differently was I'm now actually paying for this. So I better work hard because it's my money. So I don't want to waste it. I better work hard to make sure that I'm going to do well. Because at the end of the day, if I fail all these things, then I've wasted all my money. And so for me, I didn't want that. Um, and yet there was another motivation that really changed my heart. And I wonder for some of you guys, if maybe you're in the same boat as me, maybe you need another motivation these days just to get everything done for school. I know a lot of you right now who are in college and university, this week and next week is a big week for you, right? Because you have exams going on. I know even for some of you, they started last week, but man, this is an important week for you because not only do you have exams, you have to get in all of the final assignments have to be in. And so there's a lot on your plate, and it can be hard in the midst of being home, in the midst of, not having a place where you go to learn, but rather you just have to sit down at your desk in your room or, in the living room on the couch, wherever it is that you do school. But that's where you have to find your motivation to get things done. And that can be tough. And oftentimes we can come to school, we're thinking, I don't want to do it, and it's just another thing on my plate today. It can be hard to find the joy even in wanting to do it. But maybe our motivation needs to shift. And so maybe, though, like me, maybe this is one of the other heart shifts that needs to happen. This is what happened for me when I read this verse. And of course, this is a verse that I had read before. It wasn't anything new to me. But it was a verse that really meant something to me when I was in college in particular. And I had wished that I had applied it, though, as well as I did in college back when I was, all the years before in junior high and high school. This is what it says in Colossians chapter 3, starting in verse 22. This is from, this is what we read here, starting in 22. Slaves, obey your earthly masters in everything you do. Try to please them all the time, not just when they are watching you. Serve them sincerely because of your reverent fear of the Lord. And then in 23, this is important. Work willingly at whatever you do, as though you were working for the Lord rather than for man. And so this is an important verse, I think, for us, even though for Paul here, who's writing this, he's the one who's talking to slaves. And just a little bit of a side note about this passage and about other passages in the Bible where they talk to slaves. It in no way endorses slavery. They're not saying this is a good practice, but rather for the writers of the Bible, they knew they had to go talk to slaves because it was an important part of their culture. And when I say important part, I mean it was a big part of their culture. And so they had to address people who lived in that way. God never intended for people to be a slave in the sense of being less than others. And even when we read about people in the Bible who actually had slaves, in no way is God endorsing them. It's just part of the narrative, and it's just part of the story written down for us to read. Right? But rather, though, Paul sees this as opportunity, though, just to talk to them for a moment. And he wants to talk to them about what it means to work for the Lord. And so he says, maybe the heart needs to shift and focus as to why you're working in the first place. And in fact, he encourages them, don't actually work for man, though, in the sense that that's where your motivation comes from. I just want just to kind of work really hard for the person who's over me, because I want them to be, happy with me. I want them to be proud of me. I don't want them to, do anything mean to me, whatever it might have meant for them. But rather work as though you're working for the Lord instead. Work as though you're working for the one who loves you so much. And so for me, this was a motivation that was important to shift, though, when I was in college. I had to stop seeing it as, okay, it's not about me working just for a good grade. It's not about me working just so others will like me. But for me, I need to work for the Lord. Instead, I need to give all of the wantings and desires over, and need to say to myself, I need to work as long as I'm going to work for Jesus. And so what does that look like, though? What does that actually mean, like, to work? And so there's actually about the 5 principles I could talk on, but there's only one I just want to touch on today as to what it means to work for the Lord. And I think it's the most important one. I think when we work for the Lord, it's to work with a lot of, it's about working with joy. It's about wanting to be more, I think, probably joyful about what we're actually doing, even if it's not something we love doing. And don't get me wrong, there's going to be lots of days where you just don't really feel like doing your schoolwork, where it just doesn't really feel like the right motivation today. You kind of wake up and like, oh man, I got to do that other math assignment or whatever it is I don't like doing. It's going to be hard some days to find joy, but when we work for the Lord, this is the challenge, and this is what he wants us to do, because when we show that kind of joy and happiness around others in the midst of work we don't want to do, that's a reflection that there's something going on within us that's more important than the work that's in front of us, because we're working for something more than the assignment. We're working for something more than the grade. There is a joy inside of us that starts to build up, and an excitement that starts to build up, that, man, oh man, what I am doing is more than just a good grade. What I am doing is more than just my parents telling me I did a good job, but rather it's about finding that kind of joy from within us, because it's a reflection of the fact that God is at work in your heart. And so for you guys, I don't know what it means for you this week, but I know for me, one of the things that really started to shift is, for me, when I would do my schoolwork, I would then see it as an opportunity, though that others would see there's something about me that looks different, that's not the same, right? Because when all of my other classmates and everyone else in my class is, groaning and complaining about, something going on with school, for me, I really did my best to really have my heart in a place in which I would have a lot of joy about what I was doing. And hopefully that would start to kind of rub off on those around me to say, man, there's something about Dan that's different, because he's not actually in a place where he's mad about what he's doing, but instead he actually wants to do the work. And so maybe for you this week, that's the motivation that needs to shift as you head into not only exams for those of you in college and university, but also for those of you who just kind of have your regular work to do, that though you would start to refocus your heart and reshift your heart in such a way where you would work for the Lord with joy, where it would be an example to others of what it means to do something well and to do it though with a lot of joy in your heart. And so for you guys, here for you would be my challenge now this week. Some of you need to start off every day, though, with the Lord, where you just kind of start your morning off with a prayer in bed kind of thing, right? So maybe just as you're in bed kind of thing, as you open your eyes for the day, you're just kind of laying there, you think to yourself, okay, this is what I have to do today, I have to do this, that you would just pause and pray and just kind of ask God simply, oh Lord, would you just give me, the joy today, though, for all the things I have to get done. And would you help me to refocus my heart and mind in the midst of the work I have to do for school, that I would think about wanting to work for you rather than for me, or rather than for somebody else, rather for a good grade. It's just a simple prayer like that in the morning, just to help you refocus. And then in the midst of your day, in the midst of your work too, there's going to be moments where you're like, I really don't feel like doing this. That hopefully what you said in the morning would start to kind of lay a foundation for the rest of your day. Though, right, where as you're in the midst of work and you're like, I really don't want to do this assignment, that though you would have a moment where you would remember the morning and say, oh yeah, I remember when I prayed though this morning, and I asked the Lord just to give me joy in the midst of this, that in that moment you would experience that joy, that it would come. And so that's my challenge for you this week, that you would start to shift your heart though in such a way where instead of what's happening in the midst of your day, or though just wanting to focus on, wanting to get a good grade or whatever it is, that it would start to shift to a place of joy. And so anyway, guys, if you look below, there's going to be, I think they'll look down in the comments. You'll find 2 or 3, I think, other questions down there you can go through. As well, we hope to see you on Wednesday at the live stream. Anyway, that's my encouragement for you this week, that you would just kind of stick with that, and that you would start to find more and more joy in the midst of your schoolwork, no matter where it is you find yourself in this season. All right, guys, I love you. I'll catch you later. Bye.